Over 2 million lives have been lost to a raging pandemic due to the coronavirus as India goes through its second wave and deals with it. We have vaccines, we have some treatment protocols, but as yet we don't know from where the virus came. Scientific community around the world is concerned. Few days back we had some science writers coming out and questioning this theory about from where this virus came, whether it's of zoonotic origins, as in it jumped from some animal source to humankind, or perhaps it was from somewhere in a lab somewhere. Now we have another set of scientists this time writing an open letter in Science magazine asking the world community to have a relook at the origins and to find out from where the virus came. This letter has been written by eminent scientists from universities like Cambridge and Harvard and Stanford. One of them joining us, Dr. Ravindra Gupta. He is a clinical microbiologist at the Cambridge University in UK. Welcome, Dr. Gupta. We have seen your letter and we would want to understand what made you, along with those 17 other scientists, to come together and write this letter.
Well, thank you very much for having me on the program. I think that the feeling was amongst us as scientists that a thorough investigation was needed for such a disastrous occurrence as the pandemic. And we felt that the response or the investigation was not adequate and it was not transparent enough for us to confidently make any conclusions. And therefore, we are calling for the scientific rigor that we apply in other research areas of life and even in this coronavirus to be applied to the origins of the pandemic.
Dr. Gupta, this is the first time that someone is wanting to know from where this virus came. It has been a general curiosity. Whom you are addressing this letter to? Like we have had an earlier exercise by the World Health Organization, but then it came to a naught.
Well, I think the letter was addressed to the scientific and broader community to remind people that the findings of the WHO investigation were inadequate. The study was inadequately done. And was not to the standard that we would expect from our own scientific methods. And in fact, a number of countries, as well as the head of WHO himself, mentioned that the investigation did not really meet the standards that it should have.
You are clearly suggesting, Dr. Gupta, that the study that was carried out under the helmsmanship of the World Health Organization did not really live up to scientific standards of what you thought it should have. In fact, if I quote from your letter, you suggest that all the information and data gathering that was done for that study was essentially done by the Chinese half of the team, and then the analysis by the rest of the team. So in a way, you are suggesting or raising certain doubts about the veracity of the data itself that was collected in that study. Am I right in understanding so?
Well, there is, of course, the possibility of selective selection of certain bits of data and exclusion of others, and we can't tell. So what we needed to have was the records of all the scientists, for example, in that building, in the research facility, open to scrutiny without any modification, so that everybody can see what viruses were being manipulated, what was being done there, and so to have a proper view on what the work was that was going on, because they were clearly working on coronaviruses. But from what we can see, the team were not able to access freely unrestricted data.
Is there a suggestion that the Chinese perhaps could have obstructed or obfuscated in terms of even data collection?
Well, because the Chinese half of the team did the data collection, then they presented to the other half of the team whatever they were instructed to show or selected themselves. That is the potential problem there. And that is not a good scientific method in a way. If you want to investigate something, you have to have clear, open and transparent access.
Dr. Gupta, you seem to be, along with other scientists in this letter, clearly suggesting that there are doubts about the integrity of the data based on which that study was analyzed or conducted. In fact, you go on to say in the letter, along with others, that only 4 of the 313 pages of the report and its annexures address the possibility of a laboratory accident. And to that extent, the 2 possibilities, the animal source and the lab source, they were not equally attended to in their study.
That's right. I think that and this is connected to my point about a scientific method. So if you have 2 main possibilities, we must investigate them equally rather than shifting our investigation onto one side, which of course is biasing ourselves and everybody else in that investigation, and is not a fair representation of the possibilities.
Right. Dr. Gupta, a few days back, science writer Nicholas Wade came out with a very exhaustive account of what could have happened or what could have led to this coronavirus becoming a pandemic raging around the world. But we understood that someone as known as Nicholas Wade had to really struggle and ultimately self-publish the article. Is there some resistance even within the scientific community to really look at the origins of virus as honestly as it should have been?
Well, I think there are many.
Is this some kind of resistance? Is this some kind of pressure?
Well, I think that people inherently do not want conflict, and they don't want to create, disharmony. I think that's a lot of people are feeling that way. And also they're saying maybe we should be focusing on dealing with the pandemic rather than looking back and, because that will not help us going forward right now in the problems we face. So I think people are feeling those kinds of emotions. Of course, if governments themselves are not leading discussion or analysis or scrutiny, then scientists will obviously feel that they are isolated, and people, we as humans do not want to risk ourselves and our careers for these sorts of things. So that's why I think it's important that people get together and speak with a single voice in the knowledge that what they are saying is not unreasonable, and actually many people have the same feelings around the world in terms of what has happened.
Well, I think before I interrupted you, Dr. Gupta, I heard the word political. Is there a suggestion that there is lack of political will to really go to the root of the origins of this virus, because perhaps the Chinese have clout? We have heard stories about the connections between the Chinese establishment and Dr. Tedros, for example. So, of course, the scientists can't go beyond a certain level in terms of the push, but is there a suggestion that there is lack of political will to find the origins of coronavirus?
Well, I mean, Tedros himself actually was critical of the WHO mission. So I don't think it's a problem with the leadership at WHO. It's just the fact that they were not allowed to do an open investigation. And that is unfortunately because they don't have enough power. And then they were, when they negotiated access, of course, the Chinese could have said no to everything. So I guess they did whatever they could, given what was available. So I can't blame WHO. Really, it's the lack of pressure from around the world. Now, that could be due to many things. People have a lot of economic ties with China. China's very powerful. So these are the kind of bigger structural issues at play. And those, of course, will be part of the story. The second thing is governments are very busy dealing with coronavirus internally and have severe problems, or as you can see. So I guess the bandwidth and the energy is obviously limited.
Dr. Gupta, if WHO can't, who can then carry out this kind of research, data-driven, inclusive, broad-based research that you are suggesting that should be carried out into the origins of the virus, and particularly the theory of the lab leak?
Well, I think ultimately China has to take the lead on this. The Chinese authorities will need to be saying to themselves, well, okay, we did not convince the world about this. Let's try again. I mean, I don't think that pressure from outside can change their mind. So this needs to come from China, in my view.
I understand. My last question, Dr. Gupta, I was going through this short letter that you have written along with the scientists, just 4 paragraphs, and I could see in the end there are 8 or 9 references and notes. It's couched in caution, very cautionary. It does not name names. Were you under some kind of pressure when you were writing this letter?
Well, I mean, we're signatories to a letter which had to, it had to be to the point without kind of laying blame. I think the whole point of this is that that this is not about blame. And I think that when we remove blame and repercussions from the discussion, we can access the truth of what happened. So this is an effort to, you know, be clear that what we're not trying to do is saying it was someone's fault.
Well, it is hoped that with this one more letter coming out, authorities around the world would again consider launching an investigation, a science-based investigation, and perhaps we would know where exactly this pandemic began. On that note, thank you so much, Dr. Gupta, for bringing this to light and making it an issue of debate, not just in India perhaps, but around the world. Thank you so much.